Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of textual study of the Quran. Today we will be starting off with verse 33 of Surah Maida. This is a very important verse of the Quran and it relates to the punishment of muharaba, which actually means to wage war against the Prophet and God, of course, and also translates into fasad fil ard. So the words are إنما جزاء الذين يحاربون الله ورسوله ويسعون في الأرض فسادا أن يقتلوا أو يصلبوا أو تقطع أيديهم وأرجلهم من خلاف أو ينفوا من الأرض ذلك لهم خزي في الدنيا ولهم في الآخرة عذاب عظيم. They should be told that the punishment of those who wage war against God and His Messenger and in this way strive to spread anarchy in the land is to execute them in an exemplary way, or to crucify them, or to amputate their hands and feet from opposite sides, or to banish them from the land. Such is their disgrace in this world, and in the hereafter for them shall be an awful doom. So the first thing that we have to understand from this verse, which, as I said, is a very important verse, it's an extremely it has extreme repercussions and must be understood fully. So if you look at the words which have been translated as striving to spread anarchy in the land, of course, as yas'auna fil ardi fasada. So what exactly does this mean? Stars Javed Ahmed Ghamidi, while explaining this in his tafsir, in his annotated translation of the Quran, he has pointed out that when a messenger of God is present in this world and in a state ruled by him, people challenge the authority of any of his directives or decisions, then this is actually muharaba against God and himself. So muharaba means to wage war against the Prophet and against God, of course. When the Prophet is right there, and he is the ruler of a state and people create a law and order situation. So when they challenge the authority of any of his directives or decisions, then this is what is called muharaba, or spreading or waging war against God and his prophet. Similarly, spreading anarchy and disorder in the land refers to the situation when an individual or a group of individuals rebels against the law and attacks the life, wealth, honor, and freedom of expression of people. So, when murder becomes terrorism, fornication becomes rape, and theft assumes the form of robbery, or people take to prostitution, become notorious for their ill ways and vulgarity, become a threat to honorable people because of their immoral practices, or they rise against the government in rebellion, or create a law and order situation for the government by indulging in heinous crimes like hijacking, vandalism, intimidating people, then such people are criminals of spreading anarchy in the land. So this has to be also clearly understood. Now, if you look at the words that have been used in the verse, yas'auna fil ardi fasada, it's a plural word, and of course the word yuharibuna is also a plural word. So yas'auna means that they strive to do something, and yuharibuna means they wage war. So this actually tells us that if a gang of criminals has committed a crime, the punishment shall not be given only to some of the criminals, but to the gang as a whole. So if a gang of criminals is guilty of spreading anarchy in the land and commits such crimes as murder, hijacking, fornication, sabotage, there is exactly no need to ascertain that who among them is guilty of the crime. Every member of the gang shall be held responsible for it and dealt with accordingly. So this is the implication of the plural, yas'auna fil ardi fasada and yuharibuna, that this crime shall be treated as a collective crime and everyone will be regarded to have a share in it. Now, what is important also is to understand the punishments that have been mentioned. These are very, very specific forms of punishment. Three of them are extremely severe, and one of them, the fourth one, which refers to banishing from the land or exiling from the land, is a relatively lighter one. Now, first, let's understand the first of these punishments, which says an yuqattalu, or of course, the word would be taqtil. So, the word taqtil actually means that punishment, the criminals who commit muharaba against God and His Messenger, and they spread anarchy in the land, they should be executed of course, that is something that is a given because qatl is mentioned, murder is mentioned, but the words are not qatl, it's qattalu, qattala, which means that this execution should be carried out in an exemplary way, in a way that it serves as a warning for others. And that is why we understand that as far as killing someone in an exemplary way is concerned, or if there is a severity in the process of killing him or that person, then this would satisfy the conditions of taqtil. So it is a requisite of this directive that such criminals be executed in a manner that other people, when they look at that punishment, they are able to learn a lesson from them. And we now can understand that the punishment of stoning to death or rajam is one form of taqtil. So taqtil is to carry out a punishment, the punishment of execution, and in an exemplary way for people who are striving to spread disorder in the land. And rajam is one form of taqtil. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, in his own times, in accordance with this directive, he administered this punishment to certain criminals guilty of fornication. And of course, these were criminals who were guilty of, one example that can be given clearly is rape. So rape is one example in which they were given this exemplary punishment. The next thing which is mentioned is an yusallabu, aw yusallabu. So yusallabu also, like qattalu, is an extensive form, which means that just as there has to be some severity in taqtil, which is already found in taqtil, same is the word with tasleeb. So it implies that the criminals should not merely be crucified. In fact, they should be crucified in an exemplary way. The cross on which the crucifixion generally takes place, we all know, is an erected bulwark. It's a structure upon which a criminal is nailed through his hands and feet, and he's abandoned there until his death. And this form of punishment, no doubt, is exemplary, but as we can see, the word tasleeb says that even more exemplary means of this punishment that can be added into it can be adopted, and in fact they should be adopted because of the nature and in fact extreme nature of the crime committed. Now the next thing which is mentioned is أَوْ تُقَطَّعْ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَأَرْجُلُهُم مِّنْ خِلَافٍ, which means severing the feet from the opposite sides. Arjuluhum min khilaf, of course, that would mean that you are severing the hands and feet from opposite sides. So one hand from this side and the feet from the other side. So this also is a form of punishment in which limbs are, as we can observe, are severed from the opposite sides. And they also serve as a very, very critical and a severe warning to the onlookers. And the purpose of this punishment is that the criminal is allowed to live, then he should serve as a reminder and an example to the society, and also remain incapacitated to commit future evil. So the first two punishments, they actually end the life of a person. But this third punishment, which means that their hands and feet must be severed from opposite sides, this of course is something in which the criminal will be living, but he will serve as a warning, because severing of limbs on the opposite side, from the opposite side, this is a clear warning, because this is something which only occurs in this punishment. If you look at the last punishment, it says, or banish them from the land, أَوْ يُنْفَوْا مِنَ الْأَرْضِ. Now this punishment of exile or banishment, as we can all know and understand, is the least in intensity which is prescribed for such criminals. And therefore we have to understand that this fourth punishment, without harming his body in any way, only deprives him of his environment, of his house or country. The words of the Qur'an require that in general circumstances, this punishment should be carried out in its true form, which is of course to banish a person from one place to another. But today, of course, in the given situation, if this is not possible in its ideal way, then the directive shall stand fulfilled if the criminal is confined to a particular area or a particular environment, and also if he is kept under house arrest. So a house arrest also should suffice to implement this punishment. The thing that also should remain in our understanding is that since each of the punishment types mentioned in the verse is separated by the word aw, if you look at the words يقتلوا أو يصلبوا أو تقطعوا أيديهم وأرجلهم من خلاف أو ينفوا من الأرض. So these are أو, which means or. Or means you have to select between these punishments. So it is evident from the Quran that an Islamic government has flexible authority to administer any of these punishments, keeping in view the nature of an extent of the crime and the circumstances of the criminal in which he has committed it, and the consequences which it may produce or can produce in a society. The lighter punishment of nafi, which is exile, is placed with the two very severe punishments of taqtil and tasleeb, so that if the criminal requires any mitigation, any leniency, then he should be provided with this mitigation. He should be provided with this leniency, because that is what we have to fully understand. And now, if you look at the very last part of the verse, it says, "Lahum fid dunya khizyun wa lahum fil akhirati azabun azim," which means that such is their disgrace in this world, and in the hereafter, they will have a bigger punishment. So they indicate that while inflicting this punishment upon criminals, no feeling of sympathy or mercy should arise. The Almighty who created them has ordained complete disgrace and humiliation for people. So people who are guilty of spreading anarchy and disorder in the land, guilty of crimes like robbery and hijacking and for ransom or rape, they deserve this disgrace and humiliation if they commit such crimes. And the punishment that has to be given must take this into account, that the humiliation that we have, the words used in Arabic are khizyun. So that has to be understood, that God wants that criminal to be publicly humiliated. And then it says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ تَابُوا مِن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ أَن تَقْدِرُوا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ تَابُوا مِن قَبْلِ أَن تَقْدِرُوا عَلَيْهِمْ فَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. So a translation is that except those who repent before you overpower them, so do not commit excesses against them, and you should understand well that God is forgiving, ever merciful. So this actually means that if such criminals come forward and confess and give themselves up to the law before the government lays hands on them, before it is able to arrest them, then God says that they should be dealt with as common criminals. They should not be regarded as criminals of muharaba or spreading disorder. Again, something very important to note, that in spite of this intensity, in spite of this extreme nature of punishments that you can see, the Almighty says that if remorse arises in the mind of the criminal, he comes forth and confesses and lays down his own self before the authorities. Of course, we have to understand that there is one thing in which a person truly confesses, and there is another thing in which this confession is merely to save his skin. So these are two distinctions which, of course, a court or a judge can fully know. But the thing is, if that confession is something that is not merely to save one's skin, but a true confession, and circumstances also prove that, then the Almighty says that they should be dealt as ordinary criminals. They should not be given the punishment of muharaba. And the stress in the word fa'lamu anna Allah ghafurur rahim is very important to note. It says that it becomes clear that no measure of retaliation by the government is permitted if the criminals repent and reform themselves before the government captures them. So fa'lamu is like a warning given to them. The Almighty is merciful and forgiving. Now, if He forgives a person who repents before he is seized by the law, why should other people adopt a different way? Why should other people adopt a different attitude? So such is the importance of this verse, that we have to keep it in mind. And then the Quran says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu ittaqullaha wabtaghu ilayhi alwasila wajahidu fi sabilihi la'allakum tuflihun innal ladzina kafaru law anna lahum ma fil ardi jami'a wa mithluhu ma'ah ليفتدوا به من عذاب يوم القيامة ما تقبل منهم ولهم عذاب أليم يريدون أن يخرجوا من النار وما هم بخارجين منها ولهم عذاب مقيم. This is the Sharia of God. Believers, fear God about it. Seek His nearness, and for this continue to strive in His cause, so that you may prosper. As for those who, in spite of conclusive communication of the truth from the messenger, still believe in him, still disbelieve in him, if they are able to acquire all the riches of the earth and as much besides, so that in return for it they can redeem themselves from the torment of the day of judgment, it will not be accepted from them, and for them surely is a woeful punishment. They will like to get out from the fire, but they shall never be able to. For them is an eternal punishment there. Again, something that has to be noted. But first, look at verse 35, which is also something that has at times been misunderstood. And the word wasila has taken its Urdu form in the translations and understanding of many people who have written about this verse from the subcontinent, because the wasila, the word wasila in the Urdu language has a different meaning than what it has in the Arabic language. And this is what we have been cautioning about, that remember, at times there are two words, or the word is the same, but it's not always the same meaning that they possess in different languages. And such words are also actually called false cognates, which means that they are not true cognates to one another, which means that they have different meanings when they are in different languages. Several examples exist of this. I've given these examples on other occasions. For example, if you look at the word bride, for example, in the English language, you know what a bride is. And of course, she's someone that a bridegroom brings home. But on the contrary, the word is the same, bride. In the French language, or in French, it means something else, and it actually refers to the reins of a horse, in which you pull a horse. So of course you can see the word is the same, but the meaning is different. The word Jamara, something that you commonly see in our Urdu language, it actually refers to a group of people. And so in the Arabic language, the word al-Jama actually refers to the state authority. We never use this word the same, but word is the same, but this is not used in the Urdu language in the same meaning. And this can go on and on. The word gala comes to my mind. So the word gala actually means a competition, but we know that in the Greek language, for example, gala means milk, Gala. The word is the same. So the point of caution is that the word wasila is not the same as it is in the Urdu language. So typically, if an Urdu perspective, this verse would be translated as that you seek some wasila before God, which means seek some means of nearness. Seek someone so that you can bring yourself near through that person to God. In the Arabic language, the word wasila actually means nearness. To procure nearness is what is implied here. So ibtahu ilayhi al-wasila or wabtahu ilayhi al-wasila does not mean that you start finding a mediator, someone who is in between, who can bring you closer to God. It actually means that find God's nearness. And for this, wajahidu fi sabilihi la'allakum tuflihun, that you must strive for God. You must strive to earn His pleasure. So that is what we have to understand. And then, of course, the two verses that follow, they are absolutely simple. That such criminals who take to this rebellious attitude and who deny God intentionally, then they will try their best to liberate themselves on the day of judgment. But that is not going to happen, even if they have enough ransom, which is twice that they might have, or as much as they already have, and they double it. That's not going to release them in any case. They would like to come out from this pitfall or this pitiful this torment, but they would not be able to do so. Walahum azabun muqim. So there is for them an eternal punishment. So one more thing that we have to understand, that this eternal punishment which the Quran speaks of is one form of punishment, which means people who are guilty of kufr, people who intentionally deny the truth, and that, of course, one form is that you intentionally deny a messenger of God. Then for them is the eternal punishment of hell. But it should not mean that all punishments are eternal. So therefore, we can see by analogy, there could be punishments in which a person might be suffering or might be made to suffer in hell for some time, and then once that punishment has finished or completed its term, then he would be taken out from that place. So that's also a note of caution that we have to understand. And then we continue, because we know that in between there was this this warning that had come forth. Otherwise, the punishment of muharba, once it finished, and that inner warning that was stated, right after that it goes back to another punishment, and this is the punishment of amputation of hands. And it is mentioned in words that you can see before you: وَالسَّارِقُ وَالسَّارِقَةُ فَاقْطَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا جَزَاءً بِمَا كَسَبَ نَكَالًا مِنَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ فَمَنْ تَابَ مِنْ بَعْدِ ظُلْمِهِ وَأَصْلَحَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يَتُوبُ عَلَيْهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ يُعَذِّبُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. This is the Sharia of God. Hold fast to it. And as to the thief, male or female, if their crime is proven, cut off their hands as a reward of their own deeds and as an exemplary punishment from God. And remember that God is dominant over all. He is very wise. Then whoever repented and mended his ways after committing this oppression, God will look upon him with favor. Indeed, God is forgiving, ever merciful. Don't you know that the sovereignty of the heavens and the earth belongs to God only? He will punish whomsoever he intends and forgive whomsoever he intends according to his law and wisdom. God has power over all things. So now we come to this punishment of theft, which also has to be understood very deeply and very comprehensively, because it has caused a lot of commotion and a lot of misunderstandings. If you look at the text, the words are فَقْتَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا. So the word yad, which is of course the plural of word yad is aid, it can clearly be understood because the Quran has said cut off the hands. So hands shall always be cut from below the wrist, and because of the affinity between the crime and the nature of its punishment, the Quran says, I mean, this is something which is an indication from the Quran. The right hand must be cut, must be severed and amputated, because it is the instrument of doing things. However, we must also understand that the punishment of amputating the hands is prescribed for a thief, whether male or female. And everyone who is aware of the linguistic delicacies, I would say, or nuances of the Arabic language, he should know that the word sariq and sariqa, which means sariq means a male thief and sariqa means a female thief. If you look at their construction, they are adjectives, and they denote thoroughness and completeness in the characteristics of the word they qualify. So they do not, for example, refer to one instance of sarqa or one instance of theft. A person who, commits the theft in a situation where his crime can really be classified as a theft, and one who commits it can really be classified as a thief, is what is connoted by this word. So you would be wondering that what exactly is the implication of what I've just said. The implication is very simple. If we look at the opposite, that for example, if a child steals a few rupees from his father's pocket, this happens, or a wife pinches some money from her husband's purse, or if a person steals something very ordinary or plucks some fruit which is hanging from his neighbor's orchard where maybe he's passing through, or he carries away something valuable which has been left unprotected, again an example, drives away an unattended grazing animal, or he commits this offense under some compulsion, for example, extreme hunger. So you can see that all these are unworthy acts, and they warrant a punishment, but certainly cannot be classified as acts of theft, which this verse that we have just studied qualify. They do not warrant this punishment, because this punishment can only be given when the criminal does not deserve any leniency, and the circumstances of the crime are such also that they do not warrant any leniency. The nature and circumstances of the crime are such. So, for example, we know in the times of Caliph Umar, he did not give this punishment of the severing of hands or amputation of hands. The reason, as I just said, was the famine that had ensued in his times. And that famine was something in which, of course, food was not available, and therefore if a person stole some food under compulsion because he was hungry, and hunger made that person steal food, he did not cut hands, not because he revoked this punishment as some people who understand it in this way, but because The word theft cannot be applied in this situation. He did this under compulsion. He could not have helped himself. He was hungry. So he did not give this punishment to any person who stole food under compulsion, and so on and so forth. So we have to understand that this is a very important part of the punishment. Not every act of theft qualifies to be the one that is mentioned in this verse. Also, you can see another thing which is mentioned in this verse. It says, "Nakalam min Allah," as an exemplary punishment from God. Now, this is the objective of the punishment, and therefore, if people think that it is a very severe punishment, they have to understand this objective, that God wants to make a person who is a compulsive thief or is a thief in the actual sense of the word a real big lesson for other people. It's like a deterrent. It's like a exemplary punishment from God. And if you can see that there are two reasons stated for the amputation of hands in total, if you look at both these reasons. So firstly, it is said that it is the punishment for the crime. The words that are used are jaza'am bima kasaba. It is a punishment for what he earned. And the next thing which is said is nakalam min Allah, which means as a severe warning for others. And that is, of course, the meaning of the word nakal. So this, because of the fact that both these reasons are stated adjacently without any particle of conjunction between them, so they must be regarded as essential in carrying out the punishment as a means of a severe warning for the society. And it is by not understanding both these reasons simultaneously that people end up thinking that the punishment is severer than the crime itself. It's not severer than the crime itself. The first is because of what he did, and the second is to make that person an example and hence a deterrent for any other instance of theft. So if you are not able to gauge this, then we would not be able to understand the severity. And that is why the Quran has made it absolutely clear that this amputation of hands is not something which is to be taken or implemented without understanding the nature of the crime that has to be committed in all circumstances. So the words are Wallahu ala kulli shay'in qadir, that God has power over all things, and before that it is said that he is dominant over all things. So this of course refers to the fact that he has the right to give directives to whomsoever he intends, because he's the king of the universe. Alam ta'lam anna Allah lahu mulku samawati wal ard. And so he has this authority to do that, and he is also forgiving and merciful, and therefore this should not mean that if a person repents then and mends his ways, then he should not be forgiven. Yes, for the hereafter he could be forgiven, but for that it is essential that he makes amends and he mends his ways as well. So the punishment shall be administered even if a person repents and mends his ways, and in spite of receiving this punishment in this world, he shall only be given in the hereafter this punishment if he repents. He will not be given the punishment if he repents and mends his ways. So we have to understand the worldly punishment, which is of course mentioned in parallel to the punishment that will be received by a person in the hereafter. So فَيَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ يُعَذِّبُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. يا أيها الرسول لا يحزنك الذين يسارعون في الكفر من الذين قالوا آمنا بأفواههم ولم تؤمن قلوبهم ومن الذين هادوا سماعون للكذب سماعون لقوم آخرين لم يأتوك يحرفون الكلمة من بعد مواضعه يقولون إن أوتيتم هذا فخذوه وإن لم تؤتوه فاحذروه ومن يرد الله فتنته فَلَن تَمْلِكَ لَهُ مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا. So this means, O Prophet, let not those who are trying to compete with one another in rejecting the Sharia of God put you in grief. Those also who say with their tongues, we have embraced faith, even though there is no faith in their hearts, and those also who have become Jews. They keep their ears tuned to lies, the lies of those people who are a separate group from them, who have never come to you. Change what is said to them, its real meaning, even after the context and occasion of what is said is ascertained. They say, if this is the decision of your case, then accept it, and if this is not so, then stay away from it. They are in a state of trial. So that is what the Quran says. They are in a state of trial, and whoever wants to inflict with whoever God wants to inflict with trial, he is definitely inflicted with it. So the thing that we have to understand here is once again very important, that as far as these words are concerned, Ya ayyuha Rasul la yahsunka allazina yusari'una fil kufr. The word, the address which is made by the word Rasul, of course, is meant to express the fact that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has not been entrusted with any responsibility beyond preaching and delivering glad tidings and warnings. So if he fulfills this responsibility, he has done what was entrusted to him in this regard. And if people do not profess faith, he is not liable for that. He is not responsible for that. And it is the people who are responsible for this. The Prophet's duty is something that stands completed. And now, if you look at the other part of the word of the verse, you'll also realize that it says, "Min al-lazina sammaun lil-kazibi akkalun lis-suht fa in ja'uka fahkum bainahum." So this is something which tells us that these are the people who are coming to the Prophet to have a particular decision in their favor. But before even that is mentioned, you can see that the words that are used for them are وَمِنَ الَّذِينَ هَادُوا, those of them who call themselves as Jews, which this itself is something which tells us that the word Jew was never given to them as a name by their own prophet. This is something that they gave their own selves. Otherwise, it is evident from the Quran that all prophets of God called their followers as Muslims. So whether they were called as Jews, or as we know, in the case of the followers of Jesus, they ended up being called as Nazarenes, or later on Christians, we know that this was not the name that Jesus gave to them. Earlier on, we have been noting this, that in Surah Hajj, it has been explicitly stated that the word that was given to the followers of Abraham, Abraham told his children, and he said that I am going to keep their name as Muslim. So the words are Sammakumul Muslimin. So he gave them the name of Muslim. So this is something that came very much after them. So what the Quran has said here is also something that is noteworthy. So if you look at the word, it says Samma'una lil kazib, Samma'una li qawmin akharin lam ya'tuk. Lam ya'tuk. What does this mean? It says that they keep their ears tuned to lies, the lies of those people who are a separate group from them, who have never come to you as yet, who have not yet come to you. Now, so what does that mean, that they have not come to you? It actually is a reference to the leaders and scholars of the Jews, to the scholars of the Jews who would concoct lies about the Prophet day and night, and instead of coming out openly against him, what they would do is they would incite their followers to show hostility towards them. So they would remain behind the curtain, and they would instill their own or incite their own followers to create this mess. And if you look at the words yuharrifunul kalima min ba'di mawadhihi, yuharrifunul kalima, it actually means that in spite of the fact that the context and occasion of what is said is evident, was fully evident to them, they knew what was implied. The Quran says yuharrifun, they would change the occasion and context of what was absolutely evident to them. They would alter this context, they would alter the occasion, and in this way they were guilty of extreme and blatant interpolation. So it is not the fact that the context and occasion were not evident to them, or they maybe made a mistake, no, or made it did something in innocence. The Quran says no, they did it deliberately. They would change the context and occasion, and that therefore would totally alter the directive. So the Quran says, "In utitum haza fakhuzuhu wa illam tu'tahu fahzuru." If this is the decision of your case, then accept it, and if this is not so, then stay away from it. Again, something which they would devise, which means that if they do not want a just verdict in the light of the Sharia of God, on the contrary, they want a verdict that pleases them. So it's not, they are not sincere in telling them that we want God's verdict. What they are looking after or going after is that they would like a verdict that pleases them, that they are happy with. So they tell one another that if the verdict suits them, only then they should accept it. Otherwise, they should evade it. So that is what we have to understand, that you have to be careful in this regard. And if God has subjected them into a certain trial, وَمَن يُرِدِ اللَّهُ فِتْنَتَهُ فَلَن تَمْلِكَ لَهُ مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ لَمْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَن يُطَهِّرَ قُلُوبَهُم لَهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا خِزْيٌ وَلَهُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. Then you cannot do anything for him in opposition to God. You cannot do anything for him. It is these whose hearts God did not want to purify. For them is humiliation in this world also, and a great punishment in the hereafter. So clearly you can see that this is a mention of the famous established practice of God about giving guidance or depriving someone of guidance. If a person is someone who really takes care and nourishes the guidance that he always has, the conscience that he has, his guidance is increased. But if the opposite happens, then they cannot do anything for him in opposition to God. So, which means that then God will deprive them of that innate power of the conscience to accept what right and wrong are. They will be divested of that, and this is the greatest form of error that a person can be in. So that is why the Almighty has said, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ لَمْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَن يُطَهِّرَ قُلُوبَهُم, said it is these whose hearts God did not want to purify. He did not want to purify because God does not want to purify the hearts of people on this specific principle which he follows in this regard, and that is according to which they are no longer worthy that their hearts be purified by God, because they themselves chose to tread the path of vice. They left the path of virtue. So now God is not going to guide them. He will not choose to purify their hearts. As I said, this is something which is in accordance with their own deeds. لهم في الدنيا خزي ولهم في الآخرة عذاب عظيم سماعون للكذب أكالون للسحت فإن جاءوك فاحكم بينهم أو أعرض عنهم وإن تعرض عنهم فلن يضروك شيئا وإن حكمت فاحكم بينهم بالقسط إن الله يحب المقسطين. Their ears are tuned to hearing lies. Their ears are tuned to hearing lies and to bear false witness. Consume what is unlawful without any hesitation. So, thus, if they come to you for verdicts, it is up to you to give a verdict or ignore them. If you ignore them, they will not be able to inflict any harm on you. And if you give your decision, it is essential that you decide between them with justice, because God, in Allah yuhibbul muqsitin, likes justice. So if you look at the words, consume what is lawful without hesitation, it actually means that they are fond of lying. They are given to spreading falsehood and themselves to speak lies. So they are always ready to bear false witness in any religious matter or in any lawsuit, and for this they can even take bribes. So sammauna lil kazibi akkaluna lis-suht, that they are able to take bribes for this. And that is why it is said, the Prophet is being told that it is up to him whether he takes his cases or not. If he does not, they will not be able to inflict any harm on the Prophet. So God has actually decided to expose them. And even if the Prophet defers the cases they bring to him, they will not be able to in any way harass or harm him by creating a propaganda against him and his preaching. So, viewers, we can see that it is evident from the words of this verse that if the people of the book living under an Islamic government want to decide their affairs according to their Sharia and from the courts of their own scholars and jurists, there is no hindrance in this, because this clearly shows that they were given this option that they can decide their verdicts in their own courts, or they can bring the matter to the Prophet. So we know, in accordance to this, if you look at Islamic history, throughout history, the Jews and the Christians, they were given this liberty that if they wanted to decide their public matters that related to their private matters that related to their own Sharia, then they were given this option to decide according to their own faith. They were not imposed. Islamic law was not imposed on them unless they themselves wanted it. So that is why we know that the reason that until the time they profess faith in the Qur'an, it is only befitting for them that they turn to the Torah and the Gospel. This is what the Quran clearly says, that if you are not accepting the Quran, then of course you have to accept the book until that time happens. So the Quran then says, وَكَيْفَ يُحَكِّمُونَكَ وَعِنْدَهُمُ التَّوْرَاتِ فِيهَا حُكْمُ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ يَتَوَلَّوْنَ مِنْ بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ وَمَا أُولَٰئِكَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ. How do they make you give a verdict? How do they make you give a verdict even though they have the Torah with them, which contains God's own verdict? Then, after turning to you for verdict, they defy it as well. In reality, they are not even a people who believe. So this is actually a question of amazement. وَكَيْفَ يُحَكِّمُونَكَ وَعِنْدَهُمُ التَّوْرَاتِ. How is it that they come to you when they already have the Torah with them? And look at what the Quran says, فِيهَا حُكْمُ اللَّهِ. It contains the hukum of God. It contains the directive of God. So, which means that this expression of amazement, of course, has a lot to tell us. They do not believe in Prophet Muhammad, but they still want a verdict from him. If a certain verdict of the Torah is not acceptable to them, they bring it to the Prophet. So they don't believe him, but they would like a verdict from him which is favorable to them. So this is what the Quran says, that it is evident from this that if the law of God has been given in the capacity of law, then following it is required in itself. No one can make a new law in its place even while keeping its objective in view. So we have to understand that after the revelation of the Quran, of course, which was of course almost 2000 years after the Torah was revealed, it was mandatory upon its followers to follow its directives. So we can clearly see that how can it be allowed for a Muslim to put aside the law of God and make a new law for himself, which is a very natural corollary of this directive. So we can clearly see when the Quran says that then after turning to you for verdict, they defy it as well. So what happens is that at times when they think that their own verdict of the Torah is not going to be favorable for them, they will come to the Prophet. The Prophet is now going to give them a verdict, and then the Quran says, يَتَوَلَّوْنَ مِنْ بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ. Then after turning to you for verdict, they do not even accept it. So since they from the very beginning never desired that a verdict of justice be obtained by them, at first they would turn to the Prophet, but if his verdict was not according to their desires, they would defy it as well. So you can see how they would be double crossing. In the first instance, they would be trying to bypass the Torah. In the second instance, if the Quran itself would be something that would not give a verdict, or the Prophet would not give a verdict according to their desires, they would not even accept that and come back to their own desires, which clearly sees that they were not after justice, they were after satisfying their own desires. So with this we come to an end to our passage that we have studied today. So before we start off this literal and idiomatic translation of the passage that we have just studied, if you have any questions, please raise them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our first question asks, in the context of naqisat al-aql, and since we're talking about punishment, why do women get the same punishment as men when their testimony and their shares count as half of men?
So as far as the shares are concerned, that has a completely different philosophy. It's not because of any deficiency in them. And that's a topic that we have taken up, and I'd advise the person who is asked to please look at that part. However, the word naqisatul aql has been wrongly translated as conveying the fact that women are deficient in intellect. If you look at the hadith from which this verdict has been derived, we have been explaining this hadith also all along, that it is actually referring to the fact that women have been given a certain concession in their worldly affairs and in their religious affairs. And that is what is meant by naqas al-aql. Naqas al-aql does not mean a defective aql. And that again is something that is the Urdu meaning of this expression. The word naqisat in the Arabic language means reduction, so to reduce something. And here if you look, the Quran says that your worldly responsibilities have been reduced. And the example is given in that hadith. And also it tells us that their religious responsibilities have been reduced. And when the women who asked them that what are the religious responsibilities that have been reduced, so the Prophet said that they have not been asked to fast or to pray when they are menstruating, when they are passing through their cycles. So this is like a relief given to them. So the hadith itself tells us that the whole issue is not about deficiency, it's about concession, and that is a very common meaning of the Arabic language. Hence, I mean, if you understand this nuance of the Arabic word, you will not in any way think that women are deficient in intellect. They are absolutely, I mean, they are just the same as men. So any crime which is committed with this willfulness, with calculated intent, in cold blood, it will not differentiate between the genders. I mean, it's, as far as this investigation is concerned, if it is carried out, if and it comes true, then the distinction in the punishment between the male and the female will never be made, because, as I just said, they are entirely equal in this matter.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Dr. Saleem. Shabnam, you're up next. Please go ahead.
हाँ जी, थैंक यू सर। हमें ये मालूम है कि अल्लाह ताला द ज्यूज वर सपोज्ड टू फॉलो द शरिया ऑफ तौरा, तो सर उसकी शरिया जो है उस वक्त तक अनऑल्टर्ड थी तब तक, क्योंकि अदर जगहों और दूसरी जगहों पे तो उन्होंने काफी टेम्पर किया उसके साथ, और दूसरे अगर उस वक्त तक अनऑल्टर्ड थी तो क्या अभी भी वो अनऑल्टर्ड ही है?
I mean, see, the Quran has already said, "Fiha hukmullah." The important words are, "Wakaifa yuhakkimunaka wa indahum at-Tawrat fiha hukmullah." How did they come to you? When they have the Torah with them, which has the verdict of God, which actually means that the verdict that they were seeking regarding a particular form of directives was still preserved by that time, until that time. Whether it was tampered later on or not is another story, it's another historical debate. But if we look at the verse in its historical context, we can clearly see that until the time of the Prophet, the Quran is telling the Jews that it has the Torah has the verdict of God in it. Why are you coming to the Prophet? You have your own book, and unless you convert, and unless, of course, your understanding becomes different, and you think that now you are being called to a new faith, until that happens, you're still on your faith, then you have to accept the hukum of God, which clearly shows that until that time it had not changed or altered.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Riaz, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Is the white collar crime, for example, the corruption, can be classified as sariq?
I mean, sariq is something who steals. And again, as I said, the white collar crimes that are committed it's a case that will be made, and we will see what are the circumstances in which this crime was made, the nature of the crime, the circumstances of the criminal. We cannot give a verdict from outside. It has to be a case study in which the case would be studied and seen, and the ultimate verdict, of course, will be coming from the judge or the jury, whatever the method is. All that we can tell in this regard is the principle, and the principle is that I mean, if the theft is of the nature that the criminal deserves no lenience, and the crime is committed in circumstances which are not, for example, under compulsion or any other mitigation, then that punishment can be given. But as I said, this is just a principle statement. Whether it can be applied to a particular case or not, we cannot give a verdict unless a judge or a jury is able to fully examine a particular case.
So white crime could be included in it. So it depends on the
It could be. I mean, there's no reason why it cannot be. As I said, it's just the details that have to be looked into.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Ruhi Rasul, please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
सर मेरा सवाल जो है वो लाइन 39 के बारे में है कि फिर जिसने तौबा कबूल की बाद अपने जुल्म के और इसराह कर ली तो यकीनन अल्लाह ताला तौबा कबूल करेगा इसकी, लेकिन इसके बाद, और वो बेहद बख्शने वाला है, नहायत रहम वाला है, लेकिन उसके बाद ये अल्लाह ताला बादशाह है आसमानों और जमीन का, ये आता है कि वो जिसको चाहता है बख्शता है और जिसको चाहता है वो अजाब देता है। तो ये कॉन्ट्रडिक्टरी नहीं है एक तरह से?
नहीं, देखिए, ये तो कुरान का उसलूब है, मैं बहुत दफा एक्सप्लेन कर चुका हूँ। ये जो मई यशा का वर्ड है ना, जिसको चाहता है, ये इस मफहूम में नहीं है कि वो अलल टप है उसका सजा देना या जजा देना। ये असल में इस मफहूम में है कि कोई उसका हाथ पकड़ने वाला नहीं है जब वो फैसला कर ले। यानी जो सिफारिशी हैं या जो दूसरे आप लोगों ने माबूद बनाए हुए हैं, वो अल्लाह ताला के फैसले को रोक नहीं सकते इसको इम्प्लीमेंट होने से। ये बात कि वो फैसला विजडम के मुताबिक होगा, अदल के मुताबिक होगा, ये तो गिवन है, यानी ये यहाँ ज़ेर बहस ही नहीं है। अल्लाह ताला जो फैसला करता है वो हिकमत के मुताबिक होगा और अदल के मुताबिक होगा। लेकिन जब वो इम्प्लीमेंट करने पे आएगा तो ये जिनको आपने सिफारिशी समझा हुआ है या जिनको आपने समझा हुआ है कि ये आपके जिनकी जो शफात है उससे आप बचा लेंगे, वो अल्लाह को रोक नहीं सकते। तो ये इस मफहूम में है। इस वजह से इसका कोई ताल्लुक कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन से नहीं हो सकता। अल्लाह ताला फैसला हिकमत से ही करेंगे और अदल से ही करेंगे, लेकिन जब वो कर लेंगे तो कोई रोक नहीं सकता उनको। तो ये मई शाह में इसकी नफी में मकसूद है कि जो वो चाहेगा वो करेगा, आपके सिफारशी उसका हाथ नहीं पकड़ेंगे।
जी, लेकिन सिफारशी के लिए कोई वर्ड यहाँ नहीं दिया हुआ।
नहीं, ये देखिए कुरान के दूसरे मकामात पे बहुत जगह पे आया हुआ है। आप जब कुरान मजीद में युअज़्ज़िबु मन यशाअ यग़फ़िरु लिमन यशाअ को पढ़ेंगे ना, तो आपको हर जगह पे
जी
नजर आएगा कि कुरान मजीद, मिसाल के तौर पे देखें सूरह बकरा, इसी एक मिसाल आपको दी कि युज़िल्लु बिही कसीरा व यहदी बिही कसीरा व मा युज़िल्लु बिही इल्लल फासिकीन। इसका मतलब ये है कि वो बहुतों को हिदायत देता है और बहुतों को गुमराह करता है। अब ये सवाल है ना कि भाई अल्लाह ताला जिसको चाहे गुमराह कर दे, जिसको चाहे हिदायत दे दे, लेकिन आगे वजाहत आ गई है, व मा युज़िल्लु बिही इल्लल फासिकीन, वो गुमराह उन्हीं को करता है जो खुद जो फासिक हैं, जो गुमराह होना चाहते हैं। तो असल में ये अल्लाह ताला बाज़ दफ़ा इजमाल से गुफ्तगू करते हैं, और आप जब कुरान मजीद को पढ़ें तो जो सिमिलर वर्सेस को सबको देख के आपको अंदाज़ा होगा कि यहाँ जो मामला दरपेश है वो ये है कि मुशरिकीन खड़े हैं। वो कहते हैं कि अल्लाह मियाँ से हम अपने आप को छुड़वा लेंगे, हमारी जो देवी देवता हैं वो वहाँ मौजूद होंगे। फरिश्तों को वो खुदा की बेटियाँ समझते थे और उनकी सिफारिश से वो कहते थे हम छूट जाएंगे। इस मौके पर यह कहा जा रहा है कि देखें अल्लाह ताला जब फैसला कर लेंगे वो तो अदल के मुताबिक होगा, लेकिन वो फैसला रोकने में, उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने में रोकने वाले आपके सिफारशी नहीं होंगे। ये है जो उस माहौल से बात समझ में आ रही है। और जैसे मैंने
यानी
कहा,
उन्होंने इस्लाह एक्चुअली नहीं की होती है।
नहीं जाहिर है, यानी यहाँ तो ये मुराद यही है कि बेसिकली अल्लाह ताला का ये सिफारशी हाथ नहीं पकड़ेंगे। आपका जो बिलीफ है कि आप छूट जाएंगे अपने गुनाह करके, ऐसा नहीं होगा। अल्लाह ताला की पनिशमेंट इंप्लीमेंट होगी आप पे, और वो पनिशमेंट जस्टिस पर बेस्ड होगी।
जी सर, थैंक यू।
Thank you very much. Adil Qureshi, please go ahead.
So the punishment of theft, is this the same as punishment for robbery or for a robber?
No. Robbery is muharba, and muharba is what we've just discussed earlier on. For that we have those 4 punishments depending upon the nature of the crime. We have taqtil, we have tasleeb, we have amputation of limbs from opposite side, and we have exile.
Right. And this white collar, what if we extend? Can we extend this notion to like public officials who are constantly, taking away money from the public funds and putting their personal accounts in cyber criminals also?
As I said, this is the nature, whether it's a theft or a robbery will be determined. I mean, at times the nature is very subtle. At times you are doing it by hoodwinking the law, by passing the law, and you don't care about the law, but it is in the form of a white collar crime. It could even be as severe as to classify it as hiraba. So you see, it depends on who is doing what, under what circumstances. That will make a particular crime a crime of either hiraba or a common crime of theft. So that is why I gave this principal answer, that we will be looking at the details of the case on a case-to-case basis. We just cannot, announce a blanket statement that, well, this is hiraba and this is, for example, an ordinary case of theft. Every case of theft can reach this situation or this extent that it can border on robbery, it can border on embezzlement, and willful embezzlement, willful bypassing of the law, misuse of public funds. So again, as I said, if that comes to light, that the person is doing so and he does not care about the law, then of course that crime would become even more severe. The circumstances would be such. But for example, let us suppose that a government servant or a government official is underpaid and he has done something under compulsion, maybe because, for example, his wife was sick or maybe his child was sick, whatever, and he did it out of pure compulsion, and so that is a different story. That doesn't mean it's not a theft itself. It is a theft, but that theft certainly cannot be classified as a robbery. It's not something in which he's challenging the law. He's compelled to do something. So you see, that is why it is essential to investigate the nature of the crime, the circumstances of the criminal, and if this nature and circumstances, they do not permit any lenience or any mitigation, then the punishment of theft will be implemented. I just gave you this example that Caliph Umar, he did not implement this punishment of theft in his times when the famine was there, simply because he thought that stealing under compulsion because a person is hungry does not warrant that person that punishment, and such a person cannot be called a thief in the true sense of the word, because he's not stealing for the sake of theft. He's stealing out of compulsion, and the government is not being able to provide enough food for them, such people. And now, if they steal, then they should not be given this severe punishment. So, you see, he was actually looking at this attribute which is mentioned in the Quran, sariq. The word sariq cannot be applied to such a person. This can only be applied when he deserves no lenience and no mitigation.
Right. So last question about this word sarik. So sarik is a noun. What would be the verb form of it? Like you said.
Saraka. Allazi saraka. Allazi saraka.
Thank you,
He
sir.
who commits a theft.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. And related to the word sariq, is sariq used in reference to theft rather than the gender itself?
I'm sorry, I couldn't get the question.
The question is sariq used, the word sariq, used in reference to the action of like somebody stealing, theft, rather than the gender itself, because it doesn't say sariqa.
No, I mean, it says sariq. Sariqa is said. I mean, the gender is said. I mean, the gender is referred to when it is said that the thief, whether he's a male or a female, the thief, whether he's a male or a female, if this crime is committed in its ultimate form, that no lenience is deserved by the criminal, then regardless of whether he or she, I mean, whether the gender is a male or a female, the punishment shall be given.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Salman Aziz, please go ahead.
The Hanafites say that the punishment, the lenient most punishment, is equivalent to imprisonment, as told by Imam Abu Hanifa, and also refer it to Hazrat Umar also. Is it correct or not, sir, please?
So, as far as Imam Abu Hanifa is concerned, we need to look up that reference. I'm not sure about that, but Hazrat Umar never gave punishment of prison, because there was no such punishment in the times of the rightly guided caliphs. Prisons came into being much later on. So they were temporary prisons, like, for example, which would mean that a criminal is waiting for the offense to be implemented on that person. So for that time, when the hearing was going on, he would be held temporarily. But once the punishment was announced, it was never ever the case that there was a jail punishment in the Islamic Penal Code. It is a much later addition.
Shaban Ansari, please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
अच्छा, जैसे ये शहरों में, जैसे खास तौर पे कराची में और दूसरे शहरों में भी अभी शुरू हो गया है कि वो जो रॉबरी, एक तरह की मोटरसाइकिल पे, गन पॉइंट पे जो है, मोबाइल रास्तों में, गलियों में, जहां कहीं भी मौका मिले वो छीनते हैं, और जो जरा सा भी रेजिस्ट करे वो उसको गोली मार देते हैं। तो अब इक्का दुक्का लोगों ने कुछ इस तरह शुरू किया है कि उन्होंने उनको पकड़ के मारना शुरू कर दिया, या एकदम घर से जाके गन पिस्टल लाके उनको मारा है। तो क्योंकि और कोई नहीं, उनका कोई हल ही नहीं है, वहां पर कोई पुलिस में छुट जाते हैं या वही लोग होते हैं। तो क्या ये उसमें अपने डिफेंस में आ जाता है इस तरह उनको मारना, या ये गलत?
ये तो बिल्कुल गलत
है।
नहीं, आप बेशक उन्होंने रॉबरी की है, लेकिन आप इस रॉबरी को रिपोर्ट करें। आप खुद जज और जूरी नहीं बन सकते। ये तो कानून को अपने हाथ में लेने वाली बात होगी। अल्लाह ताला इस मामले में बिल्कुल मुतय्यन है। उन्होंने सख्ती से इसको कहा है। नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने कई मौके पे मुतनब्बे किया है कि अगर कोई जुर्म कर रहा है तो उस जुर्म की सजा रियासत की तरफ से दी जाएगी, आप खुद नहीं दे सकते। आप उस क्रिमिनल को अप्रहेंड करें, पकड़ें और कानून के हवाले करें, बाकी फिर कानूनी कार्रवाई की जाएगी। वरना अगर ये लोगों को मौका दे दिया जाए तो फिर तो वही होगा जैसे मॉब जस्टिस हमारे यहाँ होता है, लोग पकड़ते हैं लोगों को और उसको मार देते हैं। कितनी दफ़ा ऐसा हुआ है, या इंजर कर देते हैं। तो ये किसी भी मॉब को या किसी भी फर्द को इसकी अथॉरिटी हासिल नहीं है। आपने वो रिपोर्ट करना है, और अगर वो रिपोर्ट करने के आप नहीं है,
उन्होंने उनको पिस्टल मतलब उनके कनपट्टी पे रखी है और उन्होंने उनको मार के मतलब हाथ से हटा दिए उन्होंने और उसको फिर उठा के उनको मार दिए, तो ये भी डिफेंस में नहीं आएगा?
हाँ नहीं, ये तो और चीज है ना। देखिए, ये तो अपना आपने दिफा किया यहाँ तो एक आपकी
जी जी
जान पे पड़ी हुई थी। अगर आप अपनी
जी
जान ना
जी
बचाते तो वो आपको की जान ले लेता। ये तो बिल्कुल और चीज है। लेकिन ये बात कि आप घर जाएं और लोगों को बुला के लाएं और फिर उसको कत्ल करें, तो यहाँ तो आपने कानून अपने हाथ में ले लिया ना। यानी यहाँ तो वो क्रिमिनल वहां पे ठहरेगा नहीं जब आप घर चले जाएंगे। ये तो ये होगा कि वो चला जाएगा, उसके बाद आप उसको तलाश करेंगे, उसके घर जाएंगे और पहुंच के उसको वहां मारेंगे। ये दुरुस्त नहीं होगा। लेकिन उस मौके पे अगर आपको अपनी जान बचानी है और जान बचाने के लिए आप कोई कदम उठाते हैं तो वो दिफा में आएगा।
सही, यही मैं पूछना चाहती थी कि क्या इसमें फर्क है इन
जी।
दोनों में?
Thank you very much. Hamar Rasul, please go ahead.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sahab.
Walaikum
Dr. Sahab,
salam.
my question was regarding the first verse today that we studied, which was about this terminology that you have used, sir, about waging war against the Prophet and God. If you are committing murder or rape or robbery. So, sir, my question is that is this applicable only in the times of the Prophet when the Prophet is the head of the state, or is it also applicable in times of the Khulafai Rashideen being in power? Because I specifically want to ask about those, because you also said that the whole group then will be given the punishment, and it's not
Yes,
just about one person or two people. And so my question
correct.
was specifically regarding the assassination of Hazrat Usman, that when he was killed by a group of people or a mob which had political reasons, but anyway, they were not given any punishment by the next prophet, by the next caliph, Hazrat Ali, and instead Hazrat Ali used them in his war against those who stood up for punishing those
Correct.
people. And
Yes.
so
So
how do
I
we
get
just
I get your question. So you see, you have to understand that there are two clauses which are mentioned here. One of them is yuharibun Allah wa rasulahu, which actually refers to the fact that this punishment will be given when the Prophet is governing the state, and that is what we call waging war against God and His Prophet. But the Quran continues and says, وَيَسْعَوْنَ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسَادًا, and they spread disorder in this manner, which actually tells us that this is something which is not confined to the times of the Prophet. Anyone who creates a law and order situation, anyone who takes the law in his or her hands, will be dealt with in the same way. So the Prophet is authorized in his own times, and this is something that will continue for all times to come, as far as the nature of the punishment of a crime would remain the same. In which, of course, the common element is that you just disregard the law, and you don't have any respect for the law, and you create a law and order situation in broad daylight, and you don't have any qualms. You don't conceal your crime. You don't feel ashamed of your crime, but you do it openly. So that is something that goes on and on. And as far as your particular question regarding the assassination of Caliph Usman is concerned, as I said, I mean, this is more of a question of history than the implementation, what happened and what Caliph Ali thought had happened, and how he thought that he should. I mean, one can argue against his decision that he should not have done this, for example, and he should have called for the qisas of the assassins of Caliph Umar, and then he should have taken charge, maybe, or maybe appointed them to places wherever he did so. So this is a case study situation in itself. And in my study, I think that so much so much time has passed over this phenomena that it is difficult to give a value judgment in favor or against the situation. All that I can say is that everyone acted to the best of their conscience and their ability. And later, maybe some details could have been worked out, and later you could have said in hindsight that maybe he should have done this and someone else should have done that. And that is something very easy to say. But you see, in the heat of the moment, things do get out of hand at times, and things do happen that you would not like them to happen had the circumstances been different. So I think that we should reserve our judgment in this case, and just think that Sahaba, whatever they thought was best for them, or whatever satisfied their conscience, they did that. And there could have been a different strategy, there could have been a better strategy that ultimately should have been adopted. But as I said, this is something that is easy to say in hindsight when things have progressed so far. Otherwise, in the heat of the moment, and because of the presence of so much data that we might not be privy of. I mean, you see, we might not be privy to so many things which maybe Caliph Ali was knowing, and maybe he had his own, let's say, intent to implement, that I always refrain from giving a value judgment. So I would suggest that whether he did it or whether he did not, it is something that is. I mean, unless we see this in the court of justice in the next world, in which every I would say shred of data is made available, and then the verdict is passed regarding what he did was right or wrong. That is the only way, I would say, to wait for that judgment from God.
Thank you very much, sir. Is it possible to ask another question regarding the verses today, right now?
Could you please raise your hand again? We're kind
All
of
right.
in the
Okay.
last almost 25 minutes, and we
All
still have a few hands. Dr. Saleem, we still have a few hands. Should I continue to take those?
So I would just like to finish off the literal and idiomatic translation so that we have some time, and then inshallah we'll have some time left, hopefully, for the Q&A that are left.
Thank you.
So, starting off the literal and idiomatic translation with this request and with this exhortation, I would say that please take this seriously. This literal and idiomatic translation is meant to bring you closer to the text of the Quran by understanding or at least noting down the vocabulary, so that, as I have said repeatedly, that this vocabulary is repeated a lot in the Quran. It's just a question of maybe going through this vocabulary again and again and maybe memorizing it, and you'll find it very easy to translate the Quran and understand the Quran even without knowing the Arabic language. This is what is called a direct method. Many scholars in the past 3 centuries, at least in the subcontinent, have used this very successfully. That people who don't know Arabic, but because of this literal translation and some memorization of the words and the vocabulary, they are able to make a lot of sense of what the Quran says. So, Innama jazaa'ul lazina yuharibuna Allah wa rasulahu. Innama means only. Jaza, reward. Al-lazina, those who. Yuharibuna, wage war. Allah, against God. Wa, and. Rasulahu, his messenger. Wa, and. Yas'auna, strive to. Fil arde, or you can say strive to spread. Fil arde, fi is in. Al ard is land. Fasada is disorder. So, indeed, or the only punishments for those who strive, or those who wage war against God and His Rasul, and who strive to spread disorder or anarchy in the land. What is that? And then the punishments are mentioned. An is that, yuqattalu, you must kill them in a severe manner. Aw yusallabu, crucify them in a severe manner. Aw, or tuqatta, cut off or sever. Aydihim, their hands. Wa, and. Arjuluhum, their feet. Min khilaf, from opposite sides. So cut off their hands from opposite sides, which means if you cut off the left hand, you cut off the right foot. And if you cut off the right hand, you cut off the left foot. So it's like tuqatta aydihim wa arjuluhum min khilaf. Min khilaf means from opposite sides. Aw, or yunfaw, they are exiled. Minal ard, from the land, from the place that they are living in. Zalika, this. Lahum, for them. Khizyun, humiliation. Fit dunya, in this world. Which means that this is their humiliation in this world. Wa, and. Lahum, for them. Fil akhirah, in the hereafter. Azabun, punishment. Azim, great. And in the hereafter, for them is a great punishment. Illa, except. Allazina, those who. Tabu, repent. Min qabl, before. An taqdiru, you overpower. Alayhim, them. So that would mean except those who repent before you grasp them, before you catch them. Fa'lamu, therefore understand. Anna, that indeed. Anna, that indeed. Allah, God. Ghafoor, forgiving. Rahim, ever merciful. So know that God is Ghafoor and Rahim. He is forgiving and ever merciful. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, O you who believe. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu is such a common phrase in the Quran. O you who believe. Ittaqullah, fear God. Wabtaghu, and find ilayhi, towards him, al-wasila, nearness. Or in other words, idiomatically it can be translated as procure or find his nearness. Find his nearness. Wa, and jahidu, struggle. Fi, in sabilihi, in his path, in his way. La'allakum, so that you tuflihun, earn success. So strive in his way so that you can earn success. Inna, indeed, allazina, those who, kafaru, disbelieved, law, if, anna, there is, lahum, for them, ma fil ardi jamia, whatever is there in the earth, ma fil ard, whatever is there, or what is there, jamia, altogether. What is altogether there in the earth? Wa, and mislahu, like it, marahu, with it. So whatever they have and like it and with it, something even more with it. Liyaftadu bihi, so that they can earn ransom. Bihi, through it. Min azabi yawmil qiyamah, from the azab of the day of judgment, from the punishment of the day of judgment. Ma, not. Tuqubbila, accepted. Minhum, from them. So idiomatically it would mean that those who have disbelieved, if they give in ransom whatever is in the earth and something more with it, which is equal to it, so that they can save their skin from the punishment of the qiyamah, of the hereafter, ma tukubbila minhum, it will not be accepted from them. Wa, and lahum, for them, azabun alim, azab means punishment, alim means very, very grievous. Yuriduna, they would want, that, yakhruju, they come out, minan nar, from the fire. They want that they come out from the fire. Wa, and ma, not, hum, they, bikharijina, that come out, minha, from it. So literally it would mean that they would not be among those who would come out from it. And of course idiomatically you can say that they would like to come out from it, but they will never be able to come out from it. Ma hum bikharijina minha, they would never be able to come out from it, from that azab, from the fire of hell. Wa, and lahum, for them, azab, punishment. Muqim means something which stays, something which is eternal, something which is always qaim. Was-sariqu was-sariqatu, wa, and as-sariq, the male thief. Wa, and as-sariqa, the female thief. Faqta'u, sever, aydiyahuma, their hands. Jaza'an, as a reward. Bima, for, kasaba, they earned. Nakalan, as an exemplary punishment. Minallah, from God. So the thief, whether male or female, sever their hands as a reward from what they did. Of course, the word reward here would mean punishment. As a punishment for what they did, nakala minallah, as an exemplary punishment from God. Wa, and Allah, God, Aziz, powerful, Hakim, wise, and God is powerful and wise. Fa, therefore, man, he, taba, repented, mimbad, after, zulmihi, his oppression, wa, and aslaha, and reformed. Fa, inna Allah, therefore indeed God, yatubu alayhim, or yatubu alayhi, is going to be affectionate on him. Inna, indeed, Allah, God, Ghafoor, forgiving, Rahim, merciful. So he who, faman taba would mean he who repented, min ba'd zulmihi, after the oppression he committed, wa aslaha, and reformed himself. Fa inna Allah, so therefore God, yatubu alayhim, yatubu alayhi, God is going to be lenient to him, God is going to accept his tawbah. Inna Allah Ghafoor Rahim, indeed God is forgiving, ever merciful. Alam ta'alam, so alam, not, lam, is that, or it's like a question. Lam, not, ta'alam, you know, anna, indeed, or that indeed, Allah, God, lahu, for him, mulk, sovereignty, as-samawat, the heavens or the skies, wa, and al-ard, the earth. So don't you know that the sovereignty of the heavens and the earth belong to him? Lahu, it is for him. Yu'azzibu man yasha, he punishes Man yasha, whoever he wants. Wa, and yaghfiru, he forgives. Liman yasha, whoever he wants. Wa, and Allah, God, ala kulli, on every shay'in, thing, qadir, powerful. So he punishes who he wants and he forgives who he wants. Again, as I have already explained, this doesn't mean that he would do so without any justice or wisdom. No, his wisdom and justice will always govern his act of punishment or forgiveness. No one will be able to stop him from implementing his will. That is what is implied by man yasha. Wallahu ala kulli shayin qadir, and God is powerful over everything. Ala kulli shayin qadir. The word is actually Wallahu qadirun ala kulli shay, or God is powerful on everything. Ya ayyuhar rasul, O messenger, la, not, yahzunka, make you sorrowful, allazina, those who, yusari'una, strive, fil kufr, in their disbelief. So those who strive in their disbelief, they should not make you sorrowful. Minallazina qalu, from among those who said, amanna, we believe, bi afwahihim, from their mouths. So those who said we believed, they said this word believed from their mouths. Wa, and lam, not, tu'min, they professed faith, qulubuhum, in their hearts. So it says that those people who are striving in their disbelief, from among those who said we believe from their mouths, but they did not mean it from their hearts. Walam tu'min qulubuhum, they did not have faith in their hearts. And wa is and minallazina hadu, those who are called, or those who became Jews. Samma'una lil kazib. Samma'una means they keep their ears, tuned, lil kazib, to falsehood, to lies. Samma'una means they hear likaumin akhirin, for a people others, which means that lam ya'tuk, not ya'tuk, come to you. So idiomatically it would mean, and from those among the Jews who listen to lies and who listen in for people who have yet to come to you, as we have discussed that they were their scholars who would send them. Yuharrifuna means change. Kalim is the plural of kalima, which means they change words. Mimbad, after, mawazi'ihi, their occasion and context. They change words from their context and occasion. Yaqulun, they say, in utitum, if you are in utitum haza, if you are given this, which means if you are given something favorable, fakhuzuhu, take it. Wa illam, and if not, if lam, not, tuhu, you are given that, fahzaru, abstain from it. So if you're given something favorable, take it, and if not, then abstain from it. Wa, and man, he who, yuridillahu, God intends, fitnatahu, to put someone in trial, falan, so therefore not, tamlika, has power, lahu, minallahi shay'a, against God the slightest. He will not be able to do so in the slightest. So what is being said is that that whoever God wants to, or whoever person God wants to inflict with a trial, God is able to do so. He is able to do so, and you cannot do anything for him. So the words, if you look at the previous words, are lan tamlika lahu, you can not do anything for that person, minallah, against God, shay'a, the slightest. So if God decides to put a person into trial, you just cannot help that person in any way. Ulaika allazina, these are the people, lam, not, yurid, wanted, Allah, God, an, that, yutahira, purify, kulubahum, their hearts. So these are the people who God did not want to purify their hearts. Lahum, for them, fid dunya, in this world, khizyun, humiliation, wa, and lahum, for them, fil akhirah, in the hereafter, azab, punishment, azim, great. For such people will be humiliation in this world and a great punishment in the hereafter. Samma'una lil kazib. Samma'una lil kazib, again the expression has been repeated. It says that they are tuned to hearing lies. Samma'una means they are tuned to hearing lies. Samma'una lil kazib. So they just want to hear lies. Akkalun. Akkaluna means they consume. Lissuht, what is unlawful, what is forbidden. So they are given to listen into lies, and they are given to eating, they are given to consuming what is unlawful. Fa, therefore, in, if, ja'uk, they come to you, fahkum, therefore you can decide, bainahum, between them, baina, between whom, them, aw, or, ariz, ignore, anhum, them. So if they come to you, you should decide between them, or you can ignore them. Wa in tu'riz anhum, wa, and in, if tu'riz, you ignore, anhum, them, fa, therefore, lan, not, yadurruka, harm you, shay'a, the slightest. So if you choose to ignore them, they cannot harm you the slightest. Wa, and in, if hakamta, you decide their matter. Fahkum, therefore, decide, bainahum, between them, bil qist, with justice. So if you decide to give a verdict, then give it with justice. Inna, indeed, Allah, God, yuhibbu, likes, al muqsitin, the just. So indeed, God likes the just. Wa, and kaifa, how, yuhakkimunaka, they make you an arbitrator, or they make you the judge. Wa, and wa is in the meaning of whereas. Indahum, with them, inda, with whom, them. At-Tawrat, Torah, fiha, in it, hukmullah, is the hukum of God, is the directive of God. Summa, then, yatawallawna, they turn away. Mimbade, after that. Mimbad means after. Zalika, that. So why is it, or how is it that they make you the arbitrator, whereas they have the Torah with them, in which is the hukum of God, in which is the directive of God, and then they turn away from it even. Even then, when they see that the verdict is not in their favor, they turn away from it. Wa, and ma, not. Ulaika, they, bil mu'mineen, amongst the believers. So, or they are people who are not believers. For ma ulaika bil mu'mineen would mean they are people who do not believe. They cannot be regarded as believers. So we have come to the literal end to this literal and idiomatic translation, and we can use the remaining time for any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. I'd like to remind the participants to be very concise. Akram Bhatti, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Sir, if I understood correctly, in response to a couple of questions about bribery, you had said that if they do the white collar crime, which I thought bribery as well, because they're not paying it, then they're not being paid enough, then that's okay. And so that's
no, that's not what I said. No. That's not what I said. I am saying that in that situation, the crime would deserve the punishment would be some lenient punishment. It's like stealing and under compulsion. If a person is hungry and is not being provided by the government with food, then if in that condition he steals or she steals, then as we know that Umar never implemented the punishment of theft. This does not mean that no punishment will be given. It is only that the extreme punishment will not be given. Lesser punishments, of course, will be given.
Yeah, okay, that's what I misunderstood that, because Pakistan, everybody says, "Oh, I'm not being paid enough. That's why I have to take the bribe."
Yes.
So thanks.
Yes. So I mean, this is another thing. So what I was trying to explain is that extreme punishments or the ultimate punishment of severing your hands or amputating your hands is warranted only when the crime is committed in its ultimate way, in its ultimate form, which means that the criminal does not deserve any lenience.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. In relation to that question, because it's the word sariq is a noun, does that mean that it has to be a repeated offender that you can start cutting their hand?
Not necessarily. So that, I mean, the act itself must speak of a theft that has been that in which the thief does not warrant or does not in any way deserve any mitigation, any lenience. I mean, someone who does something in circumstances and situations which does not deserve any lenience. And I mean, if people are legal minded here, because of course we're not dealing with specific cases, it's quite easy to see situations in which people, when they steal, then what exactly was the purpose, the motive. Similarly, the extent of what they stole. For example, it could be something very ordinary. So you cannot sever hands for something which is very ordinary. They have to be of some significant value. So you see, the word theft must be applied on an act of stealing that is really stealing or classified as stealing. I just gave you these examples that when an animal is left unattended and he's just grazing somewhere, and now you catch the rein of that animal and you drive him home. So the animal was already unattended, and someone had left that animal unattended. And now if someone takes that animal home, or maybe waits for the owner to come and fetch that, now this is an entirely different thing. It cannot be regarded as theft. Similarly, if a wife pinches some money from the wallet of her husband, what would you say? I mean, this is not theft. This would be, I mean, it has to be classified as something else. So you see, these exceptions are common sense exceptions, and when you sit on the seat of a judge, I can assure you it is not difficult at all to see whether that crime can be classified as a theft or something which is an ancillary thing, something which is like a very trivial or an ancillary part of it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. iPhone, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. My question is, what is your view on an alternative to the current prison system? Because it's broken. In the West, it's overpopulated, high repetition of offenses, the culture within the prisons. And in developing countries, there's another problem, right? A lot of people are falsely incarcerated.
Right.
So, any view?
The punishment of incarceration and jail punishment, it seems to be an inhuman punishment, because you're not punishing the criminal himself or herself, you're punishing the whole family. And you have decided on your own behalf. For example, if a criminal immediately realizes his mistake, her mistake, now you say, no, you have to spend 10 years, you have to spend 5 years, and then you have to come out and become a person who we would regard as purified. So you see, there are a number of ills in this punishment. That is why you'll find that never ever in the Quran has it been mentioned that there is any sort of jail punishment to be given to any crime. Crimes are in the Quran are such that when they are punished, either you give a punishment which is a corporal punishment, it's like a physical punishment, or it's like a penalty, or it's like something in which you are exiling a person with his family, or house arresting a person, which means that his own surroundings are there. You'll never find this jail punishment mentioned in the Quran, not a single instance. There are 5 crimes which the Quran has mentioned: hiraba, murder or injury, theft, fornication, and qazf. These are the 5 crimes that are mentioned in the Quran. And if you look at the punishments of these 5 crimes, at no place in the whole corpus of the Quran would you find the jail punishment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. In regards to Ayah 36, where it says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْ أَنَّ لَهُم مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا, what is this jami'an referring to?
Everything. It means that everything that the person has, and mislahu marahu, and if you add the same what he has in this earth. I mean, you see, the words that are used are, let me just take out that verse so that I can explain it in a more precise way. So, innal lazina kafaru law anna lahum ma fil ardi jamia. If he has everything that is found in the earth, he owns that, and he adds an equal amount of that, of similar sort, and would like to give it away in ransom to save his own skin, that will not be possible. So jamia refers to everything.
Like once or twice as much?
No, it's twice as much. I mean, twice as much would mean 2 sets of the same thing. I mean, if you have everything of the world and 1 more set of that.
Inshallah, we'll see you all next week. So please hold on to your question. Inshallah, we'll have time next week to take more of these questions. And until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, and to all the participants for coming through.